What's up YouTube, Dale here from Zephyr, and today I am bringing you an update to my deck for this format going forward post Battles of Legend, and that is of course Yubel. Now Yubel did get an amazing card in Battles of Legend, so this will be post Battles of Legend when we get Phantom of Yubel. Now unfortunately it is the highest valued secret in the entire set. At current you can get them for £42.50 on tier 0 games after using the discount code, so make sure you go and check that out. They may have sold out, but make sure you hit the I notification and you'll be identified when they come back in stock and they open up the product. That being said as well, you can see that I've got a brand new back sleeve for my extra deck, all the way from Sleeve Chief, nice and shiny, and the border sleeves of Yubel as well. On top of that, I've also got a 2-player cloth playmat with all of the forms of Yubel on it. Extra nice. I'll show you the full mat at the end. Now this is not sponsored by Sleeve Chief at all. I've actually purchased these myself, but they were such a crazy good deal that I wanted to get the full set for this particular profile to show you off, and of course to use myself in the format going forward. I'll also show you combat at the end of the video, so you're going to get everything you could possibly ask for all in one nice video for you to see. So with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more upcoming content. Diving headfirst into the profile, we're going to be starting off with triple Spirit of Yubel. Now I have seen some people cutting this down to 2, which I can slightly understand. However, there's been a lot of times where actually the battle effect in the hand has really saved my ass. Now more times than not, especially with the Phantom of Yubel, because you can spin back a 0/0 Fiend and a Yubel monster, it's actually going to be more useful for you to have it at free. Yes, of course you can recycle it, but I still like that ability to meaning that I can hold a card like this back in my hand, and that if my opponent goes to the battle phase and I've got Nightmare Pain up, I can summon this down, and if I don't have Nightmare Pain up, I can still summon it down in defense, and it will cause my opponent a lot of issues to try and break through it, as it's technically like a nice battle fader that even if they do destroy it, I can float into a Yubel, and that's just going to give me more fodder to fuel the second Phantom of Yubel. So moving on to the starters of the entire deck. So for your main starters, you are going to be rocking your Samsara D Lotus, followed up by your Dark Beckoning Beast. Now, unfortunately, these are massive hand trap baits. Not baits as in you can keep going afterwards, but sometimes it will hurt. Now, Imperm is your weakest enemy, or the strongest enemy, I suppose, against Dark Beckoning, and Ash is the worst against Samsara D Lotus. So if you're going to be facing Yubel at your local environment, that's pretty much what you want to be targeting them with. Now, I did want to try out a build with Crossout Designator, but I haven't really found the space of it yet, and I've actually made a lot of sacrifices in the deck to try and juggle it around. I wanted to maintain the essence of what Yubel is, not just go, here's like 20 hand traps and then just 20 engine cards for a Fiend kind of turbo build. I wanted to try and make it still focus around Yubel, especially with Phantom coming out. It is just an incredibly powerful card that will give you a little bit more protection once you kind of get the materials to the grave, and technically from the hand as well. So 3 and 3, this is what you're going to want to be working with. I've then also bumped up the Grave Squirmer up to 3 as well. Now, arguably, you probably don't need it at 3, but more times than not, what I kind of learned the more and more I've played this deck is that I kind of really don't mind hard opening them. And what I mean by that is if I hard open them, my opponent is always trying to stop my Samsara D Lotus, which is ultimately trying to get you to your Spirit of Yubel, which again is ultimately trying to get you to your Nightmare Pain, to then destroy it, to get you Yubel, and to search you out your Grave Squirmer. So if any of that gets stopped along the way with stuff like Ghost Ogres, Ashes, Imperms, you name it, you still have the ability to hard open the Grave Squirmer and then still continue to make your plays. So you want to try and make sure that you can play for as many hand traps as possible because you are susceptible to quite a lot of them. So it's trying to find the balance without trying to cram the deck full with stuff like Crossout Designator as well, because you can't always guarantee that you're going to open up Crossout Designator at the exact same time your opponent has that specific hand trap. But it's still quite useful if you do want to play it. Then of course we are playing the 1 Yubel and the 1 Terra Incarnate. I've been highly tempted to play the Nightmare purely for the fact that you can actually just loop these guys back to the graveyard, back to the deck because of the Phantom of Yubel, and it's just going to give you the ability to keep recycling these, destroying multiple times, because keeping in mind that neither of these are hard once per turns, neither is your Spirit of Yubel. So even if you put the Yubel back into the deck and then you destroy a Spirit of Yubel, you're just going to get that first Yubel back again. So it just allows you to get it back out of the deck once you've recycled it, and it's basically just free fodder. Moving on to the Unchained package, I have gone back to 1 Shavara and 1 Shyama. Now, there's loads of times where I'm actually bouncing back and forth when I'm like, okay, I just want to play the Shavara with the trap card, and then there's times where I was like, I want to play Shyama. So massive shout out to Yubel Master on this one. I don't know how they keep doing it, but it just keeps dragging me back in to play the Shyama. Every time I look over at their end board, they always pretty much have the Wave King Caesar, or the DDD Wave King Caesar, which is an incredibly powerful card to end your board with. Now I know how they do it, and I will be showing you a combo at the end which will show you your strongest outcome, and it's just going to get more protection in order to complete that combo when Phantom of Yubel officially hits. Now I have actually purchased my copies, they're just not arrived as of yet, but I wanted to show you this profile so you can kind of see where it is as they are on pre-order. But the idea is that you save your Grey Squirmer, and you do have to open up your Beast and Samsara Lotus, and of course they do both need to resolve. But the other is you're going to work your way into it, so you're ultimately going to end up using Yama's effect to pop a card on the field, pop in the Abominable Chamber, and then this lets you float into your Shayama and your Shavara, because Shavara will come back from the graveyard thanks to Yama, and then of course your Shayama will of course be able to be summoned out of the deck because you popped the chamber. Overlay both of those, and then straight away you go into your DDD Wave. Now ultimately you might not need Wave, but the idea is that you weren't really playing it to protect you from the Biru, you are playing it so that you've got two forms of interaction on your opponent's turn, which is incredibly painful to deal with. Because it has a detach to negate and it's not a hard once per turn, just being able to go detach, negate, a spell trap monster effect that would summon a monster is absolutely insane. Moving on to the spell cards, unfortunately we do play triple Nightmare Throne. I'm hoping if you are a Yubel player, you pick these up nice and early. They didn't really shuffle too much from their £20 to £25 price mark. If you were lucky, you were able to pick them up at £20 a copy. They've now started to creep up to be solid £25 to £30 a copy, but it is just so important to have this card in the deck because this can get you to any of your starters. So you're basically playing additional free copies of something like Samsara or Dark Beckoning Beast. It can also get you to the Grey Squirmer, which can be very important, and it has that ability that if a level 10 or a level 11, technically, Yubel monster is destroyed or leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect, you can float into a level higher or a level lower, which means if your Terra Incarnate leaves the field via your opponent's card effect, or technically destroyed via a card effect, you then get to summon out a Spirit of Yubel, or you can summon out a Yubel, and then when Yubel or Spirit is destroyed, of course you can get into a Terra Incarnate. So it's basically a 1 for 2, which is why I'm highly tempted to put the Unending Nightmare in here, but unfortunately that Unending Nightmare is, well, a little bit tricky, and it can be quite bricky, so you do need to be a little bit careful. Now, the technical term, just so that everyone doesn't go crazy to me in the comments, the technical wording on this card is if a face-up Yubel monster or monsters you control leaves the field via a card effect. So it doesn't need to be destroyed, as long as it leaves via a card effect, you're good to float. And then of course you've got the terraforming, because you need to play as many copies of this as possible, because unfortunately Spirit of Yubel does not search it because it refers to Yubel as the individual monster, not Yubel as the monster as a whole. It's another Dark Magical Circle all over again. Then we have finally gone up to opening Spirit Gates. I know there's going to be people in the comments that are rejoicing that I finally bumped this up to 2. Through more and more testing, I completely understand. Sometimes you just need to discover it on your own, even though people are constantly telling you and just going, you need to play more than one. I get it. All right, as much as I hate drawing the bloody card, I do see the positives of having a hard copy open, especially when people are imperming something like your Dark Beckoning Beast, because you can still activate a gate, get a second one, link off the first Dark Beckoning, put it into the graveyard, go into an Almirage, and then straight away you can discard a card in order to bring back the first Dark Beckoning Beast, and then you still have an additional normal summon of that Dark Beckoning, and you can work your way into Yamas or anything else that you might need to. Then for consistency cards, I have gone with 3 Pot of Prosperity. I know some people still consider the Pura map. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan of it because it has to be activated at the start of main phase. It costs half your life points. I get it, it does get you directly to your starters, but to be honest, with the space of the deck, I'd rather play 3 Prosperity because it gives me a 1 of 6 option than play something like the Pura map. Not to mention, of course, this can get you into your board breakers should you need it. It can get you into extenders should you need it, and it can be a very powerful bait. You just need to know exactly what cards you are going to want to banish from the extra deck, and sometimes, depending on the build and the cards you have in your extra deck, it can be relatively straightforward on that one. Then we have gone down to 2 Nightmare Pain. Now I know I keep bouncing back and forth between 2 and 1, 2 and 1. It is one of your main win cons in the deck, or technically it is the main win con for Yubels. Now what I mean by that is, yes, there are other ways to win with this deck. You can of course go down the route of the OTK through the Vardros and the Princess line, but Nightmare Pain is the one that, I suppose, the more and more your opponent gets used to it and the more and more knows the Yubel matchup, they know to target this and get it off the field. But the fact this makes them forcefully attack your Yubel monsters, they can't skip their battle phase if they have a monster in attack position, they have to attack it. And then on top of that as well, it's going to give them all the damage that you were taking. It really does give you your massive win con. It's just something that your opponent will target like no tomorrow, but that's the benefit of playing 3 Grey Squirmers, is if you do hard open up a Grey Squirmer and you don't feel you absolutely have to activate this card, then technically don't activate as a effect, just activate it. Don't use this effect. And they're like, oh, I was going to Ghost Ogre that. And you're like, yeah, well, you can't Ghost Ogre it because I haven't actually activated its effect. And I'm going to be pushing in for the OTK, or technically going to force you to push in for the OTK. Then, of course, we've got the one for one, just a power play on its own, gets you into that Samsara D Lotus. The one Called by the Grave to protect you from all those pesky hand traps. And then, of course, I am still playing the one Eternal Favourite, just because contact fusing your opponent's board is incredibly powerful and funny. But then on top of that as well, it does give you that ability to constantly keep floating back a Yubel from the graveyard. You just need to be very careful of when you use it and what you bring back. Moving on to the hand traps in the deck, we are playing triple Infinite Impermanence, followed up by triple Ash Blossom, and then more hand trap deterrents in the form of double triple Tactics Talents, which you can play at 3 if you want to. I've personally decided to play 2 and slide in a cheeky skill drain. Now I have got skill drains in the side deck, which I'll show you at the end of the video, and mainly the way it was is I was torn between a couple of cards I really wanted to put into the side deck, and I had one space in the main deck. I was like, you know what, I'm just going to main deck skill drain. Now arguably it's not the best way of doing it. You probably could arguably put this up to 2, and you're going to be looking at a 41 to a 42 card deck if you wanted to go down that route. I don't mind that because you're going to be burying some of the bricks like your Shavaras, your Terra Incarnates and everything else. So it's not the end of the world if you do decide to go above 40. I do know builds that go from 40 to 45, so it really is down to your personal preference, your playstyle, your testing, and just how you naturally feel when you are playing the deck. So now I'm going to move on to the extra deck, and then I'll show you the side deck as well. So moving on to the extra deck, unfortunately this is going to cost you a pretty penny. Like I said, straight away, just by playing 2 of these, you are £90 in the hole. Not to mention if you were late to the party and trying to pick up Yubel cards, they're going to be slightly expensive. But this card is just absolutely insane. It requires 1 Yubel monster plus 1 Fiend monster with 0 attack and defense. It must be special summoned from your extra deck by shuffling the above cards from your hand, field and or graveyard into the deck or extra deck. It cannot be used as fusion material. It cannot be destroyed by battle, and you take no battle damage from battles involving this card. When your opponent activates a monster effect, quick effect, you get to tribute this card. That effect becomes your opponent, so us as the Yubel player, destroys 1 Yubel monster in their hand, deck, or field. You can only use this effect once per turn. Now, obviously, the idea is that you destroy Yubel in the deck. That can then float you into another one, which can ultimately end up leading you into Terra Incarnate. You could destroy a Spirit of Yubel, which leads you into Yubel. You've just got so many different ways to keep floating, and of course, it is that monster negator. Then, of course, we do have the 1 Triple D Wave Hiking. So I've already talked about this one. This is basically the rank 6 that you will make with your 2 Unchained. It is very, very specific. And again, it might be something that I'll ultimately end up cutting down the line. But just seeing how powerful it is once it hits the board, it does pretty much lead you to game. It is just that incredibly powerful. And when you're ending your board on something like this, plus a Phantom of Yubel, and then backed up with something like a Rage into an SP, it's just absolutely insane. Carrying on, I do like to play the 1 Almirage. It's not an absolute must. Like, you can play without this if you want to. The reason I decided to go with it is for the pure fact that there was a lot of times when I was playing it and I was like, okay, well, my opponent has impermed or they have stopped my Dark Beckoning Beast, and I can't get it off the board, but I do need to get it off the board in order to get to my other card effects, or to be able to discard something like a Spirit of Yubel, and that will then allow me to get it back to the board. So I kind of felt that Almirage was not a bad kind of mini investment to have, just in order to give me that ability to kind of play through more hand traps should I need to as well. So carrying on as well, you've got loads of flexibility in the extra deck, which is what makes it really, really kind of cool. This gives you the ability to kind of play different options should you need to. And it really depends on what you want to play as well. So carrying on for this one, of course, we do play the Unchained monsters. So we'll start off with, once they are in some sort of semi-order, we've got the Yama, we've got the Rage, we've got the Anguish, and I am now trialing out the Abomination. Now, the reason I'm trialing out the Abomination is because Phantom of Yubel allows you to destroy a card on the field, or technically destroy a Yubel on the field. So if you do have Abomination, you do get that additional pop. But on top of that as well, I did find myself a lot of the times, if I had to go out of my way or go round a little bit of a circle in order to make SP Little Knight, I was finding myself not then having a dark target to use with Anguish or Rage. So I kind of wanted to put another dark target into the deck, and I thought Abomination was probably like the best one to go with. It is a flex spot. You can take it out if you want to. More times than not, you should be going Soul of Rage into SP Little Knight, but then if you're going second, sometimes you'll actually go Anguish into SP Little Knight. You can go Anguish into Rage if you can't complete an OTK. There's just loads of different flexible options that you might want to consider depending on the route you want to take it down and how you want to go. Carrying on with the rest of the Link monsters, we are playing the 1 Muckraker. So the Muckraker is just pretty much in there. Now that you don't really mind being Fiend locked, as long as you are going to work your way up into the correct kind of Fiend outcomes, you can even consider a Nightmare Griffin. It's something that I wanted to play around with and trial out, but ultimately with the space, I kind of wanted to go more down an Abomination route than anything else. Then we do play the Fire Engine still. So in the Fire Engine, we do have the 1 Phoenix, the 1 Princess, and the 1 Amber Whale. The reason I've kind of gone with this is it does give you that graveyard recursion. It gives you that graveyard interruption. Now, I feel that this is something you could very easily cut. It does open up free spaces in your extra deck, but just through personal playstyle and testing, this has actually just been a lifesaver more times than not, because there's been a lot of times where my opponent just keeps interrupting me, and I'm like, right, okay, cool, I'll continue to go. I'm still able to make Princess. I'm still able to make my way into an Amber Whale, and they do then find this as a big issue that they're trying to spin this card back, because if they destroy it, then of course I'm going to have this card in the graveyard to use its effect that way, and you've also got the Princess that can then forcefully destroy it, put it back to the board, and the reason you're going to play the Phoenix is it is a Fiend and a Fire, so it will get you out of any Fiend or Fire lock you might have with the Princess. I do also like the idea of playing Forbidden Droplet, so that when you do lock yourself under Princess and they go, you know what, I'm going to leave you locked under Fire because you can't do anything in Yubel, you go, okay, cool, Droplet, send it, and you're good to rock and roll. The last 2 cards, of course, is Yubel, the Loving Defender, followed up by the 1 Valdres. Now, the Valdres is less important right now, in my opinion. It's still incredibly good, don't get me wrong, because you can end your turn on an Omni Negate. But the idea is that because you've got Phantom of Yubel, you have something to protect getting into this. In the past, it's more times than not, you'd probably go into Nibiru territory before you can even make this, so that by the time you make it, you're like, okay, cool, well, if I'm going to make it, my opponent doesn't have a Nibiru, it's one less thing for it to worry about. That being said, the OTK with this and the Amber Whale is absolutely insane, and I do love it. And there's a lot of times that people don't even know that you can do it that way or expect that you can do it that way, and you can catch them off guard. So that's pretty much it for the entire extra deck. Moving on to the side deck. So for the side deck, I really wanted to get Phantasme in there. Now, this is the reason that I kind of sacrificed a skill drain, put it to the main, and I also sacrificed a D barrier for this card as well. Now, the reason I quite like this is when people are playing Veilers and they're also playing stuff like Imperms and other targeted effects, being able to activate a Phantasme can help you re-brick, or unbrick, I suppose is the right word. It can unbrick your hand because you can start putting stuff like the Terra Incarnates back to the deck, the Yubels back to the deck, and any kind of card that you don't want to see in your hand back to the deck, while also providing you with a bit of a refresh and the ability to protect from targeted effects, so that if you do normal summon down Dark Beckoning Beast and they go Imperm, you can actually use Phantasme to protect it, and that's, like I said, one of the biggest hand traps to hit your Dark Beckoning Beast. Once you get the Dark Beckoning Beast on the board and you resolve it, even if they do Ash your Samsara D Lotus, you still have the ability to start making Link 2s. Now obviously you can't go into a Yama because it does require 2 Fiends, but you still have that additional monster on the board, even an additional body on the board that can help you push for an OTK or just get into a higher Link climb. Then, of course, you've got your back row hate. So I've gone with 2 Lightning Storm, 2 Cosmic Cyclone, and the 1 Harpy's Feather Duster. And then for the other hand traps I am playing triple D-Shifter. And the reason I quite like D-Shifter, and I did consider Droll and Lockbird instead of either D-Shifter or Phantasme, but what I liked about Phantasme is technically when I get Phantasme to the board, it can actually help me draw into a shifter, and because I'm not putting a card in the graveyard, if I do draw into a shifter at that point, I can Phantasme and shift my opponent once I've sided both of them in, and that can cause them huge amounts of issue because then they no longer have the graveyard accessible to them and they can't target my cards. So. And then the sacrifice for the Phantasme was 2 D-Barrier and 2 Skill Drain. Obviously, we have the third of the Skill Drain in the main deck, but that might be something that will change quite easily. But the idea is, I kind of like the idea of D-Barrier and Skill Drain because these have been the most successful cards for me in the Tenpai matchup. Skill Drain can still be kind of good in the Snake Eyes matchup, but even they are starting to side that card in, so they might have more ways to play around it and deal with it. And the D-Barrier has no effect on Snake Eyes whatsoever. So these are pretty much just for Tenpai matchups, and then more so for stuff like Voiceless Voice and the other rogue matchups you might face. Ultimately, if you're going to an event and you feel that you are going to face 10 rounds of Snake Eyes in an example, then you might want to consider a different card instead of D-Barrier, and that's when you can start opening up the board to stuff like Droll and Lockbirds if you want to, Ghost Ogres, you can even side in the Super Polys again, which is one of the biggest cards that is missing from this entire deck, and I'm not entirely set on whether I'm going to miss it or not. The more testing I will do with Super Poly, like I used to be a hardcore fan on Super Poly is staying in the deck no matter what. I love that card. I think it's such a good board breaker, and then ultimately, the more and more I played it, the more and more I tested it, the more and more I talked to other Yubel players, they were like, technically, you don't necessarily need it. It might be something that I come back to later on down the line. I don't know. More testing will allow me to kind of figure that out. So that's pretty much it for the entire profile and the entire side deck and everything in between. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you through a very nice 2-card combo of the deck to show you the maximum output that this deck can do. It's just incredibly insane. So we'll be back in a second. So here is the technical 2.5 card combo, but this one, if you do open up a Yubel monster, can actually be more ideal for you than ever before, and you're going to replace this with a Dark Beckoning. So what we're going to do is you're going to start off by normal summoning down the Dark Beckoning. This is going to get you into opening the Spirit Gates, and you're going to activate the opening of the Spirit Gates. This will then get you access to the second Dark Beckoning. Don't worry, this is just your discard folder. You're then going to use your additional normal summon to go into Samsara. You'll then use Samsara's effect to tribute it off to get you into Spirit of Yubel. Trigger Spirit of Yubel's effect to get you into Nightmare Pain. Activate Nightmare Pain, destroying the Spirit of Yubel. Now keep in mind as well, you can also use Nightmare Pain as discard fodder because you can actually add it and then use this effect to discard to bring back Samsara de Lotus. But you're going to want to be saving your discard off of opening the Spirit Gates for Yubel later on in the turn. Activate Nightmare Pain, destroy Spirit of Yubel, get you access to your Grave Squirmer, and this of course will allow you to float your Spirit of Yubel into Yubel. So we're in a very good position right now. Now, if, of course, you were able to discard another Yubel monster or a Fiend with 0/0 at this exact moment in time and still maintain a Yubel in the graveyard, you can go into a Phantom of Yubel which will protect you from the Biru. We're just showing you with a base random card in the hand for the discard to show you exactly what you can get. So you're going to link off your Yubel plus your Beast, and this is going to get you into your Yama. Yama's effect, of course, is going to trigger, and this is going to get you access to your Shavara. So you can kind of see your hand is relatively and nicely stacked at this moment in time. So now, again, you're in a position where you can spin back 2 for your Phantom, but you kind of hold it back. There's no need to use Phantom as early unless you're massively worried about Nibiru. So now we use the discarding specifically the Dark Beckoning Beast in order to bring back the Spirit of Yubel. And then what you're going to want to do here is you're going to want to use your Shavara in the hand. You're going to want to destroy the Spirit of Yubel, summoning it down, and this will then allow you to float the Yubel back from the graveyard. You're then going to want to link off your Shavara plus your Yama, and you're going to go into your Unchained Soul of Rage. This will then give you the ability to set off of the back of Shavara the Abominable Chamber. So you're now in a very good position. Now what you're going to do is you're going to want to special summon down the Grave Squirmer. You can use Grave Squirmer's effect to pop the Yubel, and in turn what this is going to do is start triggering off a chain of events. So you'll go Yubel as Chain Link 1, you'll also then use Yama as Chain Link 2, banishing it from the graveyard. This will then allow you to bring back your Spirit of Yubel off of the Yama, and then your original Yubel is going to float into a Terror Incarnate. You'll also resolve Yama's effect to destroy a card on the field, being the Abominable Chamber, because this is then also going to let you float into the Shyama. Now what you want to do is you ideally want to get 2 monsters to the graveyard. You can leave the Terror until later on and you'll just have to use it as link fodder, but it does mean you need to be very, very careful because you don't want to be leaving it on the board. So it means you can also spin it back in order to get you to a Phantom. So at this exact moment in time, if you wanted to, you can spin back your Terror Incarnate, and you can also spin back a Samsara de Lotus or a Dark Beckoning from the graveyard, and this will then get you access into your Phantom. You're then going to want to link the Shyama and, of course, the Grey Squirmer, and you're going to want to go into the Muckraker from the Underworld. Don't use this effect yet because it will Fiend Lock you, and you want to make sure you get your Omni Negate on the board. So you're going to use the Grey Squirmer in the graveyard to banish it from the grave, and this will then allow you to revive the Yubel, which is why it's important you don't spin this back to make the Phantom. You're then going to overlay Yubel and Spirit of Yubel, and this is going to get you into your Valdres. And then with the random discard in your hand, you're going to discard that using the Muckraker's effect, and this is going to allow you to bring back your Shavara. You will then be able to use the Shyama's effect in the graveyard, and this one, it lets you if it's in the grave, you get to target a theme monster or a face down card you control and destroy it. So you're going to destroy the Muckraker as it's the one you need the least. You're going to summon back your Shyama, you're going to overlay Shyama and Shavara, and you're going to go into your Triple D Wave High King Caesar as an additional Fiend. So at this exact moment in time, you're still going to have 2 more cards in the hand to play with. You've been able to get into from a very specific 2-card combo, but the idea is for the back of your Unchained Soul of Rage, you're going to be able to contact link with one of your opponent's monsters into an SP. You've got the way to negate 2 spell, trap, or monster effects that will lead into a monster summon. You've also got your Phantom of Yubel, which is going to force your opponent to attack it because you've got Nightmare Pain, and this is of course going to be your negate. It then has the ability to destroy a Yubel monster in the deck. So obviously you want to destroy a Yubel in the deck, which will give you more floatability, which is why it's a little bit of a pain that it's locked under your Valdres. But if you use the Valdres first, then of course you're going to be able to get it back into rotation later on in the turn. You've then, of course, so you've got Phantom of Yubel, you've got your Omni Negate off the back of the Valdres, you've got your link into SP Little Knight, and then of course you've got your Wave High King. Now I'm not saying this is the, bread and butter combo of the deck, but you can do each individual pieces of this with different opening hands, different opening cards, and everything else. This is, in my opinion, the best end board that Yubel can possibly get, because you're ultimately saying that you're going to get 2, if not 3 forms of interruption off the back of your Soul of Rage. You've got 4 off of the back of Valdres, 5 and 6 off of this, and then 7 off of your Phantom of Yubel, not to mention your Nightmare Pain, and then if either of these are hand traps, you're still in a very good position. So that's it for the entire profile, the side deck, the entire theory behind it, and of course the combo utilising the brand new card of Phantom. Now I can't wait for my copies to arrive. I think the card is going to be absolutely insane, and then before we know it, we'll have the Fiendsmiths here, and this deck is going to take another turn for the best. So that is it for the entire profile. Like I said, any questions at all, by all means, please put them in the comments down below. I will be more than happy to answer them for you. For now, as absolutely always, stay safe and, of course, happy dueling.